The devastating car crash in Paris's Pont de l'Alma tunnel on August 31, 1997, remains etched in collective memory, a tragedy that claimed the life of Diana, Princess of Wales, and sent shockwaves across the globe. Amidst the wreckage of the TAR, Black Mercedes, French firefighter Xavier Gourmelon was one of the very first emergency responders to arrive, confronting a scene of utter devastation without initially realizing the identity of the critically injured blonde woman in the back seat. His subsequent account, shared publicly years after the event upon his retirement from the fire service, offers a poignant and intensely human perspective from the very epicenter of the tragedy. He recalled observing the woman moving slightly, her lips forming words, fragile signs of life amidst the chaos. As he leaned closer, tending to her in those critical moments, he reportedly heard her utter final, bewildered words, a question directed perhaps at him, perhaps at the unfolding. Nightmare. My God, what happened? This intimate detail, preserved in Gourmelon's memory for 2 decades, adds another layer of pathos to the well-documented events of that night, providing a glimpse into the final conscious moments of the world's most famous woman. The call came into the Malar fire station in Paris, where Xavier Gourmelon served as a duty officer and team leader. An accident, severe in nature, had occurred within the Pont de l'Alma tunnel. Gourmelon, along with a team of 9 other firefighters, immediately mobilized, rushing towards the scene prepared to render aid to victims of what they anticipated was a serious road traffic collision. Upon arrival, the devastating reality confronted them. The front end of the Mercedes-Benz W140 saloon was catastrophically damaged, crumpled against one of the tunnel's unforgiving concrete support pillars. Peering inside the wreckage, the grim assessment began. It appeared at least one occupant, likely the driver, was already deceased. Gourmelon's training kicked in, scan the scene, identify survivors, prioritize assistance. His attention was drawn to the rear passenger compartment. There, amidst the debris, he saw her, a young blonde woman. Her eyes were open, and crucially, she appeared to be breathing, albeit shallowly. This observation ignited a flicker of hope. Focusing entirely on the immediate task, Gourmelon and his team worked swiftly to extricate her from the wreckage. At that moment, she was simply a patient, an anonymous victim requiring urgent care. He noted her condition seemed relatively stable once freed, giving him cause for cautious optimism. It was only later, after she had been transported away by ambulance, that the staggering truth of her identity would be revealed to him, compounding the shock when news arrived hours later that she had succumbed to her injuries in hospital. The blonde woman he had held the hand of, the patient he believed had a fighting chance, was Diana, Princess of Wales. The weight of that realization, coupled with the memory of her last reported words, would stay with him profoundly. For over 20 years, bound by the discretion often expected of emergency personnel, Gourmelon kept the specific details of those final moments, including the princess's last utterance, largely private, sharing them more widely only after leaving the fire service. To understand the context of Diana's presence in that tunnel, alongside Dodi Fayed, requires revisiting the chapters of her life that led her to Paris that summer night. Born Lady Diana Spencer into British aristocracy, her childhood home, Park House, was situated on the Sandringham estate, bringing her into proximity with the royal family from an early age. Despite her aristocratic upbringing, she was known for a certain shyness and wasn't academically inclined. After finishing school, she moved to London and worked in a series of relatively ordinary jobs, including time as a nursery assistant, displaying a humility that belied her background. Unbeknownst to her then, destiny had a far more prominent and ultimately tumultuous path in store. Her reserved yet graceful demeanor eventually caught the attention of Charles, the Prince of Wales. Intriguingly, Charles had previously dated Diana's older sister Sarah. However, a connection formed between the prince and the much younger Diana, leading to a courtship that captivated the world. Their engagement was announced in February 1981, and their wedding at St. Paul's Cathedral on July 29, 1981, was a global spectacle, watched by an estimated television audience of 750 million people. It was billed as the fairy tale wedding of the century. However, the happily ever after proved elusive. Diana's gentle, somewhat sensitive nature struggled to adapt to the rigid protocols, intense scrutiny, and emotional coolness that often characterized life within the senior ranks of the British royal family. What she had perhaps envisioned as the pinnacle of happiness quickly became fraught with challenges. The discovery of her first pregnancy, while joyful, added to the pressures she felt. A pervasive sense of inadequacy, a feeling of being unworthy of her elevated status, reportedly plagued her, contributing to inner turmoil. This was massively exacerbated by the relentless media attention. Photographers shadowed her every move, their lenses intruding into private moments, publishing images that stripped away any semblance of normal family life. While Diana gradually learned to cope with the constant glare, developing a sophisticated understanding of the media, the underlying pressures took a heavy toll. Publicly, the image of a happy royal couple was meticulously maintained for years. Privately, however, the marriage was crumbling. Reports later emerged detailing Diana's struggles with eating disorders, primarily bulimia, and episodes of severe emotional distress, including self-harm. The isolation she felt within the royal structure was profound. Later revelations, including Diana's own admissions, confirmed that both she and Charles engaged in extramarital affairs as the marriage disintegrated. For Diana, the breaking point arguably came with Charles's rekindled and increasingly public romance with his former girlfriend, Camilla Parker Bowles. This relationship, conducted with perceived disregard for Diana's feelings, became a source of intense pain and humiliation for her. A photograph taken years later, capturing Diana in tears during a public event, became symbolic of her private anguish. While initial media reports attributed her tears to overwhelming cheers or flowers thrown by the crowd, the photographer Ken Lennox later asserted she was genuinely distressed, possibly due to exhaustion or emotional strain, and noted that Charles appeared oblivious. Diana herself famously addressed the situation in her controversial 1995 BBC Panorama interview with Martin Bashir, stating with devastating simplicity, "Well, there were 3 of us in this marriage, so it was a bit crowded." In the same interview, she spoke candidly about her depression and bulimia, highlighting a perceived lack of support from within the royal family. While the interview garnered significant public sympathy for Diana, it also drew criticism, including, reportedly from her own sons, William and Harry, for airing private family matters so publicly. The interview effectively sealed the fate of the marriage. The divorce was finalized in August 1996. By most accounts, the divorce was a difficult period for Diana, leaving her feeling isolated despite her immense public popularity. She reportedly withdrew socially, relying on a small circle of trusted friends. Post-divorce, Diana embarked on navigating a new life, seeking personal happiness while continuing her highly impactful charity work. Her romantic life inevitably attracted intense media interest. She was linked to several men, including her bodyguard Barry Manicky, who died in a motorcycle accident, and cavalry officer James Hewitt, with whom she admitted having an affair. A close friendship with car dealer James Gilby also became public. Fodder after recordings of their intimate phone conversations, the Squidgygate tapes, were leaked. A significant relationship developed with British-Pakistani heart surgeon Dr. Hasnat Khan. Their 2-year relationship was kept intensely private, with Diana reportedly deeply enamored, referring to him as Mr. Wonderful and considering him the love of her life. Friends recounted her fascination with his dedicated, non-royal world. According to sources cited in Vanity Fair, the relationship became serious, with discussions of marriage. Khan, however, struggled immensely with the prospect of the overwhelming media attention that marrying Diana would entail. Despite Diana's reported attempts to persuade him towards a secret wedding, perhaps even contemplating relocating to Pakistan to escape the limelight as he suggested. The relationship ultimately ended in the summer of 1997, reportedly leaving Diana heartbroken. It was just weeks after this breakup, in July 1997, that Diana accepted an invitation from Mohammed Al-Fayed to holiday with him and his family in the south of France. Diana had known Al-Fayed for years, having first met him and Charles at a polo match in 1986. She traveled to his villa with her sons, William and Harry. During this holiday, reports began to surface of a burgeoning romance between Diana and Al-Fayed's eldest son, Dodi. Dodi Fayed, a film producer associated with hits like Chariots of Fire and Hook, had reportedly admired Diana from afar for some time. Known previously for a playboy lifestyle and relationships with famous women like Brooke Shields and Julia Roberts, he was, at the time he began seeing Diana, engaged to American model Kelly Fisher. Nevertheless, his relationship with Diana intensified rapidly during those final weeks of summer 1997. He showered her with lavish gifts, exotic fruits, expensive watches, rooms filled with flowers, seemingly determined to win her affection. Diana, perhaps seeking solace after the end of her relationship with Khan, appeared receptive. Friends like Rosa Monckton later suggested Diana might have been partly trying to make Khan jealous, recounting Diana planned to wear a ring Dodi bought her on her right hand. However, Dodi's father maintained the ring signified a genuine engagement was imminent. Whatever the true depth or long-term potential of the relationship, Diana and Dodi were visibly enjoying each other's company, cruising the Mediterranean on the Fayed yacht. Their relationship inevitably became the focus of relentless paparazzi pursuit. Images of them kissing and embracing aboard the yacht dominated front pages worldwide. Diana, aware of the intense interest, reportedly told the press during an impromptu interaction that her next move would surprise them, a statement that acquired a chilling prescience. After attending an anti-landmine event in Bosnia in early August, Diana rejoined Dodi. Their final holiday leg took them to Sardinia before they flew to Paris on August 30th, intending to spend one last night before Diana returned to London. They checked into the Fayed-owned Hotel Ritz. That evening, Dodi reportedly visited a jeweler, Ripossi, purportedly to pick up the ring Diana was anticipating. Their plans for a quiet dinner at the opulent Benoit restaurant were thwarted by the persistent paparazzi presence. Feeling harassed, they changed plans and returned to the Ritz, attempting to dine in the hotel's L'Espadon restaurant. Still feeling watched and uncomfortable, Dodi decided they should retreat to the privacy of his nearby apartment on Rue Arsène Housset for the remainder of the evening. This necessitated navigating past the photographers gathered outside the hotel once more, leading to the formulation of the ill-fated plan involving the decoy cars and Henri Paul driving the Mercedes from the rear entrance. The plan, intended to ensure privacy, tragically backfired. Paparazzi quickly realized the deception and pursued the black Mercedes as Henri Paul accelerated away from the hotel shortly after midnight. Trevor Rees-Jones, the bodyguard in the front seat, would later testify, despite significant memory loss due to his injuries, about the chaotic moments preceding the crash. It emerged during the inquest that Paul had allegedly taunted photographers outside the hotel before driving off. Some photographers claimed they attempted to signal Paul to slow down, but the Mercedes continued at high speed, estimated at 65 mph, 105 km/h, along the Seine embankment towards the Pont de l'Alma tunnel. Just 3 minutes after leaving the Ritz, upon entering the tunnel, Paul lost control. Subsequent investigations determined he clipped a white Fiat Uno, then swerved violently left, colliding head-on with the 13th concrete pillar. The investigation concluded Paul's intoxication, alcohol and prescription drugs, combined with excessive speed, were the primary causes. The paparazzi, though pursuing, were deemed not to have directly caused the loss of control. It was into this scene of devastation that Xavier Gourmelon and his team arrived. Recalling the specifics in his 2017 interview with The Sun, Gourmelon reiterated the initial chaos. The car was in a mess, and we just dealt with it like any road accident. We got straight to work to see who needed help and who was alive. He confirmed his initial assessment. I could see the driver, Henri Paul, was already dead, and there was nothing that could be done for him. Dodi Fayed's condition in the back seat was also critical. Gourmelon noted he was still inside, but had suffered a cardiac arrest. He died on the spot, after removal from the car. Trevor Rees-Jones, though conscious and asking repeatedly, "Where is she?" was severely injured. Gourmelon described reassuring him while his team focused on Diana. He approached the blonde woman in the rear. She was moving very slightly. I could see she was alive. He held her hand to comfort her as the team carefully worked to free her. It was then, he recounted, that she looked at him and asked, "My God, what happened?" Gourmelon focused on stabilizing her, providing oxygen. It was quick because we didn't need to cut any of the wreckage, he recalled. He noted a minor injury to her right shoulder, but no blood on her at all. When she suffered a cardiac arrest as she was being placed on a stretcher, Gourmelon performed heart massage. A few seconds later, she started breathing again. It was a relief, of course, because as a first responder, you want to save lives. And that's what I thought I had done. His initial assessment, based on the lack of major visible trauma, gave him hope. To be honest, I thought she would live, he told The Sun. That hope made the news hours later, confirming her death at Pitié-Salpêtrière Hospital due to catastrophic internal injuries, primarily the torn pulmonary vein leading to internal hemorrhage. All the more shocking and difficult to process for the firefighter who had been by her side. Having served his duty that night, Gourmelon returned home, informing his wife simply that he'd attended an accident involving Princess Diana and had managed to revive her after a cardiac arrest. The eventual outcome was a profound blow. For 2 decades, he largely kept his detailed recollections private, sharing them only after retiring, stating, "I can still picture the whole scene. I'll never forget it and always think about it at this time of year." His testimony remains a powerful reminder of the human element amidst the global event, the voice of a first responder who unknowingly heard the Princess of Wales's final words. The aftermath of Diana's death saw an unprecedented global outpouring of grief, meticulously detailed in numerous accounts. Books of condolence were opened worldwide, from St. James's Palace in London to the British Embassy in Washington, D.C. and Cairo. Mohammed Al-Fayed famously switched off all 11,000 light bulbs at his Harrods department store in tribute, not relighting them until after the funeral. London became the epicenter of mourning, with Kensington Palace and Buckingham Palace submerged beneath mountains of flowers. Over 1 million bouquets at Kensington alone, piled 5 feet deep in places. Volunteers distributed donations, and messages were collected for the family. The funeral at Westminster Abbey on September 6th drew millions onto the streets and billions to their television screens globally. Dignitaries, celebrities, charity, representatives and friends joined the royal family in a service marked by Elton John's moving performance and Earl Spencer's fiery eulogy. The procession to Althorpe for the private burial was lined by mourners casting flowers onto the hearse for almost the entire journey. The public reaction was intense and complex. While genuine grief was palpable, commentators also analyzed the phenomenon, some criticizing it as hysteria or media-driven sentimentality. Figures like Christopher Hitchens argued the media had created a cult of personality, while others like Theodore Dalrymple suggested the outpouring served a political purpose. Conversely, cultural analysts like Deborah Steinberg argued Diana resonated with many as a symbol of social change, making the grief a touchstone for other issues. Prince Harry later reflected on the strangeness of witnessing such intense public emotion while struggling with his own grief. Memorials, both temporary like the co-option of the Flame of Liberty statue near the crash site, and permanent like the Hyde Park Fountain and the Kensington Palace statue unveiled by her sons, serve as lasting reminders of her impact. Xavier, Gourmelon's account, that of a professional doing his job under extraordinary circumstances, provides a crucial ground-level perspective, preserving the memory of Diana's final bewildered question amidst the unimaginable chaos of her last moments.